Welcome to Healthcare Update with Leila Kramer. Each episode brings you informed commentary on the most recent issues in healthcare and public health, as well as in-depth interviews with prominent experts. And now, here is your host, Leila Kramer.
Hello, I'm Leila Kramer, Executive Producer for the National Library of Patient Rights and Advocacy. We are filming this interview in New York City on May 20th, 2026. Yesterday, a revolutionary new book was released that I know will change the perspectives of patients throughout the country of the dangers of healthcare being controlled by large for-profit corporations and the future of our healthcare delivery system. Matthew Zachary is the author of that book, We the Patients, Understanding, Navigating, and Surviving America's Healthcare Nightmare. The book, which pulls back the curtain on how the American healthcare system really works, offers empowering guidance on how patients can protect themselves. This book is not about fixing healthcare overnight. It's about giving patients leverage, knowledge, and agency right now. Matthew is recognized as one of this country's leading patient advocates. He's a 30-year-old cancer survivor, author, and media entrepreneur. He's best known for founding Stupid Cancer, the world's largest community dedicated to adolescents and young adults with cancer, and for leading the national movement called We the Patients. Before his advocacy career, Zachary was a classically trained concert pianist who released 2 solo piano albums. But then, in 1995, at age 21, he was diagnosed with medulloblastoma, a type of pediatric brain cancer. His treatment was grueling, including near-fatal radiation, and he faced severe isolation due to a lack of resources for young adults with cancer at the time. Today, he is my special guest. Welcome, Matthew. Thank you for inviting me to celebrate your new book with you and to have an important conversation.
Absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.
So let's start with your journey through cancer. Tell us what happened in 1995 when you were finishing college and your world suddenly changed.
Yeah, so, man plans, God laughs. I love that expression. I had been studying music and film composition and media for a decade. I started playing at 11 years old.
Wow.
And I was supposed to go to grad school. I had plans to want to, UCLA or USC and basically work with, or be the next John Williams. Why not? Let's aspire. Go big or go home. And during the summer of '95, between my junior and my senior year, I didn't play. I was interning at the World Trade Center, which is another separate cool conversation to have. And when I got back to school, I noticed that my left hand wasn't performing as well for no reason whatsoever. I'll just practice harder. That's what I thought. And why would I go to the doctor? Why would I think anything's wrong with me? And over the course of a couple of months, it got worse. It didn't get better. Because I was an ignorant 21-year-old who's invincible and nothing had ever happened to me, I just switched my hands and played this way. It was easier to do that. Eventually, I did go to the campus doctors, and they kind of just, oh, you're fine. Walk it off. Put your backpack on this shoulder and take the pressure off your left hand. Didn't work. Got worse. Eventually, I started having crazy headaches and slurred speech and just like fainting spells, and my eyes went all sideways. And then I finally got home during Thanksgiving break, and I told my parents, because why would I tell my parents? There's something wrong with me. Yeah. Why are you telling it? So then I went to the doctor, a real doctor, not the shame campus services, and they said, there's probably something very wrong with you. We need to get you tested. And in my absolute ignorance, I have finals, I have things to do. Can I just come back when I'm done? And I don't know why my parents let me do this to this day, but they said, sure, just come back in 2 weeks and get everything done. And those 2 weeks were when everything changed. And that's when I couldn't walk, I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't play at all. My brain just didn't do anything. And I had to be driven home from college. Everyone had to pack my stuff up for me. Then I got home, and on December 27th, 1995, I finally had an MRI, which no one knew what that meant. Just for perspective, in the 1990s, what is an MRI?
Wow.
Right? This is a long time ago. Before anything mattered, there was no fancy things. And I guess my favorite sort of like 90s story here, very appropriate for the time when AOL floppy disks were roaming the land. My mom and I went to the radiation place, radiology, got the test, went out to lunch, and got home, and the answering machine was blinking. And back then, that was a telltale sign, because no one calls you and leaves messages at 2 in the afternoon on a Thursday. So we, Mr. Greenswag, my legal name, we found something in your brain. It looks pretty bad. Come back. So I was diagnosed with a brain tumor over a blinking answering machine. Went back, had a second test, confirmed it, saw a neurosurgeon Friday night, and then the rest became history for chapter 2 of the crazy saga.
Yeah. Wow. That's an amazing story. Well, not amazing, but crazy.
Uniquely crazy.
Yeah. And you started something called Stupid Cancer. Can you explain a little bit about what that organization is?
Yeah, so that took 7 years. And again, in the 1990s, there was no peer support, there was no internet, there were no communities, there were no real social services. Unless you were like a little kid, or in some cases, if you're like an old man with brain tumors, there were groups for those things. There really was not a lot of breast cancer support or anything, let alone for a 21-year-old. So I kind of spent the 90s adrift. I got a job that I hated because I could never be a musician again. I was told, good luck, figure it out yourself. Get on with it, you look great, do your thing. And I worked for 10 years in a Plan B, which became Plan A in marketing and advertising. It was just miserable. I did manage to rehab myself just enough to feel like cancer didn't take it away from me, but I'd never be a musician. But it wasn't until I met my first cancer buddy, and I detail this in my book, named Craig, who espied me playing piano somewhere and realized, oh, we're both young adults with, a fairly unhealthy, jaded history together. And we had a meeting up, and Craig was in his 20s, had brain cancer, was Jewish from downstate. He'd gone through all sorts of crap. And we also went through Binghamton together. We didn't know each other.
Wow.
So Craig became my instant, rabbit hole. He said, how would you like to be a cancer advocate? And I said, what the hell is a cancer advocate? No one used that word back then. And he said to me what then led to my wanting to get into the nonprofit world. He said, you can help the next you. I'm like, I'm hooked. So a couple of years went by and I realized, meeting other 20-somethings who'd gone through all sorts of crap, there was such a need for a national movement that united back then Gen Xers and not kids and not adults into a connected community where we just didn't feel so miserable. And on top of that was academics and policy and legislation that fell after that. So Stupid Cancer was born in January of 2007, and over the 13 and a half years I ran it, we raised $15 million.
Wow.
We changed international standards, we built guidelines and best practices, and we kind of defined that young adult cancer, which were not words that went in that order sequentially, 2007. We're millions of people, we matter, we're not better or worse, we're different, and here's why we're different and what we deserve by being different.
Wow. Can you please tell our audience a little bit about why you wrote your new book, We the Patients?
Yeah, so it's been a long time coming. And I don't want to make this sound condescending in any way to other people who've written books about their cancer experience, but I was the recipient, as the very high-profile CEO of this organization, of hundreds of I Had Cancer books. And I love that gives people a sense of purpose and hope in putting their lives into these books to inspire other people. I never really wanted to do that. But I was running the organization, hosting, I had no time to write a book per se, but the pandemic kind of gave me some time, as it gave everyone time to do whatever they really wanted to get done. And instead of writing a book, I wound up producing a Spotify documentary on the history of cancer survivorship in America called The Cancer Mavericks. A little easier than writing a book during the pandemic, kind of like not an adult coloring book project per se. But along that journey, I met other people that said, you should probably consider writing a book now. And that was the therapeutic thing for me, because I didn't really want to write the Matt Had Cancer book. And having been just ticking lots of career boxes and meeting so many people and maintaining this level of pseudo cancer celebrity independence with my show and with my talks and with this Spotify series, what I felt needed to be told to the American people was never really told before from the lens of what it's like to live inside American healthcare. So many books from doctors, from policy wonks, from legislators, from professionals, there was never anything that gave Americans permission to be pissed about the absolute utter disabuse that we suffer under because this country has devolved through malfeasance where health insurance now defines your outcome, not the disease you have, and no one should fight that more than their cancer. So this book is borrowed from Cancer Mavericks. The first couple of chapters are why it is the way it is, starting in 1910, and how we've never really had nice things, but what it's taken to have progress in the first place. So that's the story I wanted to tell. Not that it's broken, but it's rigged and built this way, profits over people, but the disabuse and the privilege it had to help is now harming millions of people a day.
Yeah, for sure. So in October of 2020, during the pandemic, People magazine wrote the following about you. For 3 decades, Matthew Zachary has been standing up for patients inside a healthcare system that prioritizes profits. Here at the National Library of Patient Rights and Advocacy, where our mission aligns very closely with yours, we've made it our business to educate patients about the dangers of healthcare facilities and medical offices being owned and controlled by profit-minded corporations. Can you please share with our audience a little bit about why you feel this model could destroy the American healthcare system in terms of access to care and affordability?
It takes away the autonomy of the ideal purity that a patient should have with their doctor. Physicians go into practice with all good intentions. They take the Hippocratic oath to do no harm. But ultimately, again, I'm going to say the word malfeasance again, it's this utter disabuse of profit margins and quarterly earnings over the well-being of the humans, and this bastardization of how Hippocrates doesn't really matter anymore. And this creates burnout and moral injury and medical suicide and people leaving the practice or not even wanting to go into medicine in the first place. And every time a denial occurs, 90% of the time it's on purpose. And that delay creates more money and more cost and more injury to that patient. But they don't care because they just want their profits and they're going to blame everyone else instead of themselves.
Yeah. And finally, about your book, what do you want readers to take away from it, if you could say a little bit about that?
So in the book I talk about a Mr. Rogers quote from the 1970s where he asks a bunch of children, what do we do with the mad that we feel? And until now, the only thing we could do is yell at our representatives and hope they did the right thing. Morality is where we've been for 40 years. This should be the way it is. We deserve this. We want this drug passed. We deserve the equity. Fertility rights should be covered. Moral. But the difference now is that there's a level above moral that I hate to have to acknowledge, which is profits. Who would make the most money in the American economy should patients not have these barriers? So I'm not calling on people to channel their mad to lobbying and calling their representatives. That doesn't work anymore. I mean, not with a broad brush. It does work in certain cases. But with regard to challenging the fact that we are no longer in charge of our own outcomes, our autonomy and our agency is stripped away, and our doctors, whether it's oncology, rheumatology, whatever it is, no longer have the capacity to practice Hippocrates. It's no longer about lobbying and hill days and pretty photo ops and calling your senators. It's time for the country to organize as a voter bloc in a bipartisan single fashion to demand through civic power, which has never happened in American history, what we want from our healthcare system. And I kind of joke about this, and it's not really funny, but you can make all the money you want, as much as we hate that idea, and not harm us as much in the process. And that wraps around to where I talk about what Ralph Nader did as an American economist and a consumer protection advocate by showing that you make more money when people don't die in the car because they get the seatbelts. So I'm about organizing American patients on what is our seatbelt, because we deserve one. So We the Patients is also a nonprofit organization that I'm launching to organize people into a voter bloc. So the call to action is go to wethepatients.org and join our voter bloc.
Where can people get your book?
So We the Patients is available wherever books are sold. Most people go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I'm a big fan of smaller bookshops and smaller platforms, so that's just my recommendation, is not to not go to Amazon, because that's kind of our knee-jerk these days in 2026, but shop local. You know, go to bookstores, go to like Books A Million, or, you know, there are so many wonderful online platforms that aren't the big box groups that would really benefit from your purchase.
Yeah. And one last question, do you play piano anymore still, a little bit?
So we'll end on an extraordinary note
Okay.
that I'm very proud of. I figured if I'm going to launch a book, I'm going to do it with style. So I had the liberty and the freedom to put something together that was very special. And I haven't really performed or played piano for the general public in 22 years. I did rehab myself in the 90s and early 2000s, but it never really manifested into the career I might have been originally destined for. Man plans, God laughs. So I rented out a concert theater at Lincoln Center.
Wow.
And I performed 5 original pieces for a crowd of 300 people and launched the book on April 28th.
Wow, that's amazing.
So yes, long answer to short question. I still play. I spent 6 months rehabbing my hands to get them to where they need to be, and I'm very proud of what I accomplished.
Yay, awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew Zachary, for being my guest. This has been a very interesting and eye-opening conversation. We wish you your continued success with your advocacy efforts as well as your new book. I am Leila Kramer for the National Library of Patient Rights and Advocacy. Thank you for listening.